When we step into the book of Jeremiah, we enter one of the most volatile periods in Judah's history. The southern kingdom was on the edge of collapse, politically submissive to Babylon and spiritually bankrupt. The nation's final king, Zedekiah, sat on the thrones, but only because Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon allowed it. Though once God's chosen people, Judah had traded covenant loyalty for political alliances and false gods. They had turned to Canaanite practices such as idolatry and even child sacrifice. Corruption infected the leadership. Widows, orphans, and immigrants, those whom the law commanded Israel to protect, were being neglected and abused. It is into this dark and dangerous environment that God calls a man young, hesitant, and tender-hearted, Jeremiah. At the call of God, Jeremiah responds to God's call with self-doubt and an excuse. He protests, "I'm too young, I can't speak." His hesitation reveals a very human reaction, fear of inadequacy. Like Moses before him, Jeremiah feels unqualified for the task. In Hebrew culture, youth often implied inexperience and lack of authority. Isn't this how many of us react today when faced with something bigger than ourselves? Whether it's sharing our faith, standing against injustice, or simply doing the right thing, we often default to, "I'm not ready." But the Lord said unto me, "Say not, I am a child, for thou shalt go to all that I shall send thee, and whatsoever I command thee, thou shalt speak." God rejects Jeremiah's excuse. In essence, he says, don't define yourself by your limitations. Define yourself by my calling. God's assurance here is not rooted in Jeremiah's skill, but in divine authority. The emphasis is on obedience. You shall go on, you shall speak. These are imperatives. In our modern context, this reminds us that spiritual authority doesn't come from social status, credentials, or charisma. It comes from being sent by God and speaking his truth faithfully. Now we see the emotional cost of Jeremiah's calling. He is being prepared for confrontation or opposition and rejection. God says, "Do not be afraid of their faces." This implies that people will look at him with scorn, maybe even hatred. Still, God promises his presence and deliverance. Notice, he doesn't promise ease or success, but he does promise to be with Jeremiah. In today, standing for truth often brings pushback at work, in communities, even in families. But like Jeremiah, we're not alone. Our courage doesn't come from crowd approval, but from God's companionship. To verse 9, then the Lord put forth his hand and touched my mouth. And the Lord said unto me, Behold, I have put my words in thy mouth. Here we witness divine empowerment. God doesn't just tell Jeremiah to speak, he equips him to do it. The touch on the mouth symbolizes purification and empowerment, much like what Isaiah experienced in Isaiah 6. In Jewish tradition, speech is a sacred act. Words create, they bless, they curse, they carry weight. God is giving Jeremiah not just permission, but his own words. For us today, this is a reminder that when we speak truth, guided by scripture and love, we don't speak on our own authority. See, I have this day set thee over the nations and over the kingdoms to root out and to pull down and to destroy and to throw down, to build and to plant. This final verse in our section is powerful. God gives Jeremiah a sixfold mission, 4 actions of destruction and 2 of construction. You root out, pull down, destroy, throw down. Speak of judgment and correction, build and plant. speak of restoration and hope. This tells us that Jeremiah's message would not only deconstruct the sinful structures of Judah, but also point to a future beyond exile. Today, many of us are called into hard conversations, challenging societal norms, confronting injustice, or deconstructing unhealthy traditions. But we must also be builders and planters, offering vision, hope, and healing. Jeremiah's calling is not just about one man in ancient Judah. It is about how God calls each of us, often in uncomfortable times, to speak, act, and live with conviction. We live in a world of injustice, confusion, and spiritual wandering, not so different from Jeremiah's time. Social pressures tempt us to stay silent. Cultural trends push us to blend in, but God is still calling people to stand for truth, compassion, and justice. And like Jeremiah, we may feel unqualified or afraid. But God doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called. Finally, for personal spiritual growth, Jeremiah's example teaches us the importance of listening to God's voice over our own insecurities. It reminds us that a single obedient voice, even if young, trembling, and unpopular, can shape nations. So, what is God calling you to speak? What injustice is He prompting you to challenge? And what hope is He inviting you to plant in the lives of others? In a world that is eager to tear down, may we be faithful both to confront and to rebuild, just as Jeremiah was. That's the lesson for this week. Have a great week.